digital version of making a difference with playing video games in the hospital. My name is Alexander Pereira. I am the patient technology specialist here at Methodist Children's Hospital down in San Antonio, and I am joined by...
So my name is Rivera. I am a patient technology project manager at Mott Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
My name is Abraham Homer, and I'm the gaming technology specialist at Children's Hospital, Colorado.
I'm Mark Compas, and I'm technology child life specialist over at Cohen's Children's Medical Center over in New York.
My name is Garrett Goody. I'm the Therapeutic Gaming and Technology Specialist at Seattle Children's Hospital in Seattle.
I'm Marty McMahon, the Gaming Activity Coordinator at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston.
So, like I said, my name is Alexander. I am the Patient Technology Specialist here at Methodist Children's Hospital. And the way I describe my job is, the fun part of my job is I get paid to play video games with kids in a children's hospital. And the real part of my job is I get to do about 1.5 million other things. In the photo that's on my title page, you'll see that's just me and one of the kiddos I've worked with for years now. Kind of one of my favorite photos, just because I don't get a lot of photos with the kids I work with, especially kids I work long-term with. There's a lot of legal paperwork and stuff. But in that case, they were happy to sign kind of the waivers and have a photo for that and one for themselves. Slipping over to the next slide, you can see a lot of the photos, a bunch of photos of me playing games with kids. We have in the upper right, you see a kid playing with the Xbox Adaptive Controller. So this is a kiddo who came into our ICU with some pretty severe limitations on wanting to play, on like ability to play video games and kind of ability to use their hands and their fine motor skill. And so we got to break out the Xbox Adaptive Controller, really like set it up for them. And he got really annoyed very quickly with the fact that his mom was his co-pilot. And so became determined to figure out a way to use a controller. And what we found eventually was the best controller we could find for him is the Pro Controller for the Switch, because it had the least like force needed to hit the buttons. And so it took him a couple of weeks, but like within about 4 days, he was so annoyed with the Xbox Adaptive Controller setup and having his mom help him co-pilot that he was holding a controller and trying to make a controller work for himself. But then you also can see down in the bottom left and in the middle some of the other stuff I get to do. So bottom left is a picture of the Methodist Maker Faire. So we planned and ran a whole Maker Faire. Got a bunch of kids down to the event itself, which is not always the easiest thing to do in a hospital. And had a bunch of outside vendors, kind of maker community stuff, come in and set up really cool exhibits. We had a University Robotics Club come show off their drone, which they couldn't fly because they couldn't remote control it. It was only programmable. I was like, come on, guys. But kids still had a lot of fun with that. In the middle, you've got me with another patient doing bingo. So part of our role, especially in the COVID times, has become a lot of media director stuff, or at least for many of us, especially for me, in terms of I run bingo on some, I pretend to be a Twitch streamer and play video games for our kids to hang out and chill in the chat. I help record videos and tours and just kind of basically be the nerd and the guy they go, we don't understand how to do this. Let's go ask Alexander and he'll figure it out, which means I have to go Google a lot of things. And then there's just a couple other kids or photos of pictures with our kids, some of them hanging out together, some of them hanging out with me. One of my favorite photos that I've ever taken in the upper left, just because it actually looks like a good, well-lit photo, and I'm a terrible photographer. A little bit about how I got into this is through a lot of random happenstance. My background is in education technology with a focus on games and education. So I'm all about trying to get video games and schooling and teaching into the same kind of mix. And while I was looking for that kind of work, I came across a posting for this job in a random VR community. Applied for it, forgot about it the way you do. And then immediately moved on to some networking stuff. Happened to meet Eric from Child's Play, who had grant funded my position, at an event, and apparently he liked me because next thing I knew, I was moving to Texas.
So my name's Abraham. I'm the gaming technology specialist at Children's Hospital, Colorado. I came to this role in kind of a roundabout way. I originally started working in the film industry. I actually went to art school and studied graphic design and creative writing, worked as a graphic designer for many years, transitioned into the film industry doing special effects and production management, working with directors like Quentin Tarantino and working on all sorts of different features and stuff. And in my early 20s, I became my mother's primary caregiver. She was diagnosed with cancer, didn't want to go to the hospital. So me and my older sister took on the roles of providing her cares. During that time, I was using video games and gaming as a big coping mechanism for myself. And I kind of had this light bulb moment. I was like, well, if this is therapeutic for me, it must be therapeutic for other people. And that's when I kind of started on the journey of doing research into this new therapeutic gaming realm. And I kept working in the film industry for a while, continued to do research. I was looking into doing grad research to do exactly this kind of thing. And lo and behold, Children's Colorado, the one hospital in my backyard, was hiring for this position. I applied just like Alex did, kind of forgot about it. And lo and behold, it was a match made in heaven, and the rest is history. I've been here for almost 2 years now. On a day-to-day basis, it's always changing. I install and maintain and repair gaming equipment throughout the hospital. I conduct formal trainings for various staff members through different units so they can learn how to utilize different technologies in their workflows. I collaborate with research coordinators to research how this technology helps kids and can help clinicians and create better outcomes for our patients. And I also coordinate with providers, clinicians, nurses, OTs, PTs, you name it. We do co-treatments where we can integrate different technologies into their workflows so they can use Ring Fit Adventure for the Nintendo Switch for a PT session or a Rift S for an art therapy session. So it's a really, really interesting hybrid approach. And then, of course, I work with patients directly. So I have my own patient load, and every day I see between 3 and 5 patients working bedside with them. And one of the most memorable patients that I can remember was when I first started working at the hospital almost 2 years ago now. I worked with a 25-year-old patient who had SMA, which is spinal muscular atrophy, which is a really terrible disease that attacks your muscles. And you slowly start to lose function of your entire body. By the time I was working with this patient, he could only move his big toe. He was an avid gamer, gamed his whole life. So we collaborated and tried to figure out how can he engage in gaming, how can I engage in gaming with him, not only as a recreational activity, but also coordinate with his wound care nurses to coordinate our gaming sessions around his dressing changes, because those tend to be pretty painful for him, and gaming was a great distraction. So I coordinated with the wound nurses multiple times a week, and we set up those dressing changes around our gaming sessions, and we used the Xbox adaptive controller. So we used configuration of buttons, hooked it up to his foot. So he was kind of my trigger man, and I was on the other controller. And we played through Red Dead Redemption 2. We played Buck Hunter. I mean, we played many games start to finish. Unfortunately, that patient did pass away almost a year now. But that was a really interesting opportunity for me as well, because I was able to become really close with the family, and they invited me in on his last day, and we used a 3D scanner and were able to scan him holding his families' hands in that last moment and create some 3D prints with those as legacy objects for the family.
Nice. Connor?
So I'm Connor. I'm from CS Mott Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor, Michigan. What I am there is the patient technology project manager. I started as a patient technology specialist. So most of my day was just playing games with kids. However, things kind of took a turn when I started realizing patients have different passions and different projects and goals that they really, really want to hit. So my job role changed a little bit from just gaming to really focusing on those projects to get things done. I've done anything from creating music to making music videos, slow motion Monopoly money falling, green screen backgrounds with Raris and Lambos. Anything that they can really think of is really my goal in hitting. I've done pretty neat projects that honestly blew my mind. I had someone who was interested in capturing ghosts on cameras. Obviously, we can't really set them up in the hospital, so we had his family go ahead and set them up in different parts of the house and basement, and his friends, so he can literally tune into all the different cameras and see if there are any ghosts for him. So it's like neat little ideas that they come up with and just making it hospital friendly, but also making it accessible for them if it is something a little bit more extreme, and then also coping with the hospital itself. Another really big piece of my job is putting on events. So I host a number of community events. You'll kind of see in the top left of my slide, a family dancing. You can see dad in the background, where we invite the entire community in. We get volunteers to come hang out and we play video games all day, called Mott Arcade. Obviously with COVID, things have changed. Those have completely paused. So we found new ways to kind of reconnect kids using the Switch and their ability to connect with each other wirelessly without using the internet, all the way to online gaming, which has really shown and stepped up through the COVID crisis itself. So that's basically me and my job. I got involved actually as a volunteer. So I found out about this program and its existence. There was a viral video of Pokemon Go, and I was like, oh my gosh, we can go play and volunteer and play Pokemon Go with these kids. It wasn't the case. I reached out and wound up coordinating different events with my current job at the time. And the more I got to hang out, the more I realized like this is something I want to do every day. There's that take-home feeling of like, wow, not only have you made an impact on their lives, but they've made an impact on you when you walk away from it. So I remember my last arcade event as a volunteer. I went up to my boss, JJ Bouchard, and literally pulled up the Indeed listing and was like, is this you? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. And I went home and applied instantly. 2 weeks later, I was working with them. So since then, I've been with the program. We're kind of more of a team-based on our end. We also have like a Lego guy who in the bottom right-hand corner, you can kind of see a kiddo playing with Legos where we teach robotics and STEM education. My main thing is always not only supporting the patients, but also supporting our staff, no matter what their projects are too. And that's really shown through the need for technology through COVID. But we'll get more into that later. Thank you.
And Mark.
Hey guys, I'm Mark. I'm the Technology Child Life Specialist over at Cohen's Children's Medical Center in New York. So my start was a pretty interesting one. At college, I started studying with engineering and computer science. And at the time I was doing swimming lessons with kids, and I just learned that my heart pulled towards working with kids and kind of overcoming obstacles and fears, and working with their families really kind of lit my world up. So I switched to child psychology, and the tech stuff kind of took a back seat. But then when I fell into the field of child life, tech skills kind of showed up, and the team kind of realized that my skills were really useful, and they actually created a position for me just per diem at the time. And the more that I did with them, the more that they wanted. And thanks to the generosity of Child's Play and the gaming community, I have just recently started full-time at my hospital. I'm now able to really jump in and use those skills. And to just kind of back up a little bit, a child life specialist, what we do at the hospital is we basically work with the kids and their families, and we're basically like a teacher, counselor, and coach, and friend for like the patients and families. Kind of try to work with them to normalize and try to make the stay easier. And what we use is education and medical play to really help kids and families understand what's going on. And that way they're able to, you know, develop coping skills. We work on things that can help them through their procedures and everything. And it's really great to be able to use technology and look at the new things that are coming out to really help make that process easier. You know, for example, like VR can be used during certain procedures so that they are not looking at what's going on, then they can be having a virtual experience where it can be easier.
And real quick, I think you're the only certified child life specialist on the panel?
Yes, I believe so. Yes, and so yeah, it really is nice to be able to kind of mix the two together. I think one of my favorite things though is having special events and doing things that can bring the hospital across all the units together and socializing everyone together. In one of my slides, I believe it's the bottom left slide, you could see a team of us around one kid, and it's a Minecraft event, and Microsoft helped us out and brought a bunch of laptops for everything, and we had everyone collaborate and build something together. And what was cool is you can actually take something that's built in Minecraft and print it out on a 3D printer so that these kids could have something built together and then something real to take home afterwards. And that was really like my first experience, like creating an event and bringing the whole hospital together. And after that, we were definitely interested in doing more. And yeah, but my day-to-day has, you know, a lot of maintenance, like you guys were saying before. Definitely, you gotta be definitely ready to tackle on interesting problems. But I think with this community, it's really nice that we have each other to lean on, and we're pretty good at solving what we need to. Yeah, I think one thing, especially with the way, you know, COVID has affected all our hospitals, our closed circuit television channel, you know, our hospital-wide channel has definitely gotten a lot of attention, and we have now, from 1 or 2 shows a week, live shows, we have now a live show pretty much every day of the week. And our pre-recorded material has gone from maybe 6 hours to closer to like 20 hours of pre-recorded content that we can move throughout the day. And it ranges from a ton of stuff, like from just like meditations that the team has made, or other organizations have made videos of like trips to the zoo and places that, you know, kids are able to visit outside and kind of experience the outside world from you know, the comfort of their room. And also given my team a big opportunity just really tap into their skills of you know, teaching how to draw some art, or even some music things. And it's really nice to be able to have the team contribute their talents and skills and really get a chance to shine on the TV panel too. And it's pretty awesome to be able to give a lot of therapeutic activities from all these different angles.
Perfect. That moves us over to Garrett.
Hey everyone, I am Garrett. I am the Therapeutic Gaming and Technology Specialist at Seattle Children's. It's a lot of words to say. I have a lot of technology-related jobs at the hospital. I have, just like everyone else, had a strange path. I feel like we all have a very consistent theme, and that our job path here is inconsistent. I studied informatics at the University of Washington and wanted to be a UX designer, and I ended up being a children's librarian instead. And I spent a couple years doing that, and then in the summers I would help run a summer camp in the library. I would kind of like revitalize it, bring it into the 21st century. I would take technology and do research and things like that. And they decided to pivot away from libraries at the school, so I was in a position for a new job. And in the summer I was looking for technology related jobs and UX jobs, and I just wasn't finding anything that was a good fit. And I finally decided to look for something that was children and technology on Indeed, and the literally only job that popped up was this one. And I thought it was fake, because if I had to come up with a job, I would probably make a worse one than this one, because I'd be like, well, that doesn't really make sense to have all of these things in one thing. I would kind of have to make some concessions. So I was a bit surprised, applied, and months later, I got a cold call while I was playing Spider-Man at home. And I did an impromptu phone interview, and then a few weeks later, I was hired. So crazy how things happen like that. And the job itself is very interesting. Like everyone's saying, we all do a very similar but different thing. Each of us have a little bit of a specialization, and each of our hospitals needs a little bit different from us, but we all have kind of a commonality. We have a common tie to child's play, and we meet every week and discuss in the similar format to this. So a lot of what I do is kind of being a problem solver, and kind of helping connect staff and children and technology in a way that makes sense for the providers to use in a therapeutic way, but also a way to help facilitate normalcy in the hospital for patients. I know this is not a surprise to those watching this, but a lot of kids these days use video games as a way of coping, but they also use them as a way of communication to their peers and their family. And when you're stuck in the hospital and they don't have anyone that's in charge of facilitating that, you might have a patient who is used to talking to their friends every day on Xbox Live, and now they don't have their Xbox and they don't have any way of talking, and that causes them to shut down. And so a lot of times I will work with a child life specialist and kind of figure out what the problem is. And if it's as simple as providing an Xbox for them to talk to their friends, that's good, but maybe there's something more there. And so we can create a partnership and a relationship with all three of us or more, bring more in the team, and provide an environment where they could talk. Whereas before, for example, a child life specialist would have a really difficult time talking to this teenage boy who just wants to play Xbox, and they'll bring me in, and I'll say, introduce them to my friend, the child life specialist, and they'll talk. And then after we've built a relationship, then they are much more open to the child life specialist, and they're able to communicate in a way that is it's healthy and can be beneficial for them long term. So that's really the core of what I do. I really like to co-treat if possible. Just like Abe, I do a lot of stuff with OT or PT and rec therapy in ways that helping them in the technology ways that they may be familiar with, but not understand or have the capacity to implement. Like using VR for physical therapy, or using the Xbox adaptive controller. My most heartwarming encounter, I think, is over a period of 3 or 4 months. I worked with a quadriplegic patient who was a big gamer. He was super into Fortnite, and he had a pretty they basically told him he probably wouldn't be able to play ever again. And I kind of came in and said, well, I mean, there is ways to make this work, and we can start really small and work our way up. And we were able to use his powered wheelchair that he was able to move with one of his couple of his fingers on his hand, and I was able to unplug pieces of it and plug it directly into the adaptive controller, and so he was already familiar with how to use it, and so he was able to play Mario Kart better than most abled kids that I have played with. He was actually one of the few people that was able to ever beat me at Mario Kart, because I don't go easy on the kids. I think it's rude. But he was able to sneak out some wins, which is quite the accomplishment, and I think everyone understood that. And I got him hooked up with a controller outside, and he uses it, and he has different ways, and now he can surf the web and play games just like he could before. And so it's things like that that we're able to kind of provide this service and this knowledge and this problem solving ability that people either don't have, the other providers don't have the skill set to, or even if they did, they don't have the time. And so I like to think of our position as like a technology liaison in a lot of ways. I do some other similar things like gaming events, and during this current world event, we've done some like digital games. We've done like Jackbox with NFL players, and I did like some virtual tours with Macklemore and Ciara and things like that with patients, so they can get some one-on-one time in a way that they would normally get in person. So some creative problem solving that I'm sure everyone else is doing a similar way. It's really awesome, and there's a lot of cool technology things that come every day. So it's exciting, and I'm sure you can think of a million other things, and this job will look different in a year from now than it did today, but it's just a little slice of life.
Perfect. And Marty?
Yep. All right, so I am Marty McMahon, the Gaming Activity Coordinator at Texas Children's Hospital here in Houston. My background, kind of like everybody else's, is an interesting path. I went to school to make video games, worked on some indie projects and some mobile projects and different things like that, and then actually transitioned into education technology. So working with the student information system, or like the database that houses all of their records, and that's where like the grading gets done and different things like that. And then how I found my way this way was actually, I've been going to PAX for about 10 years now, and they always have a presence there. I always remember the Cookie Brigade raising funds at all the different PAXs. And then another community that I've heard about this from was through Desert Bus for Hope, which is actually one of the bigger fundraisers for Child's Play every year. And one of the great things they do on that charity stream is they bring in different child life specialists or different people that work in the hospital to kind of speak to how the money and everything impacts what they do every day. And it was through different outreach like that that I became interested in kind of this path. I think I was actually at the time researching my local hospital back up in Buffalo to see like who to contact, who in child life to reach out to and see if they wanted this position. And then it was like that week that Child's Play just started tweeting out a whole bunch of links to all these different hospitals that were getting the grant funding for these positions. So I actually applied at 3 different hospitals that had it. Like everybody else, I think our roles fit a lot of different pieces to a lot of different puzzles. I always break my role down in 3 main sections. One is doing bedsides, like I think everybody else does, where I have my own caseload. I go see patients based on recommendations of other child life specialists and our activity coordinator team here at Texas Children's to meet the needs of different gaming-minded patients that we have to kind of bring some of that normalcy back to their environment. When you're here in the hospital, there's a lot of different things that you don't have a choice in. You have to take your medicine. There's different things like that. So being able to bring choice back into what they do, being able to just come in, hang out, and provide them an opportunity to play a game that they're interested in or something that they haven't tried before is a great outlet. Second main part that I usually am facilitating are group or different social events. And then the third one is I just file it under admin because it's kind of the catch-all for everything else. That is like researching new technology, figuring out what might work, what might not work in our situation, fixing and troubleshooting, and all of that kind of stuff in between. I think one of the some of the different things I get to do that are really impactful are like helping with memory making. So maybe we have a special patient, a social situation, or it might be an end of life situation. It might be something that the family could take home in memory of their patient. So sometimes we might 3D print an object that reminds them of them. And we usually try and work with the patient on designing what that might look like or what their legacy wants to be. Some other different impactful interactions I've had are different end of life situations. So we've had, obviously, Make-A-Wish is a great cause, but sometimes patients can't go do their Make-A-Wish. So there was a patient I had that one of our child life specialists kind of frantically at the last moment pulled me into. Their wish was to go to Disneyland, but medically they couldn't make it there. So we work with Make-A-Wish and we try to bring as much of Disney to them as possible. And in partnership with our child life specialist and one of our VR headsets, we were able to bring the theme park and roller coasters to them in their hospital room. And that was a very meaningful and impactful moment for that family, being able to kind of bring that to them when they couldn't otherwise make it to those situations. Some other great things too, I love to do are, we have our teleconferencing robots, which if you guys aren't familiar, allows patients to visit different areas of the hospital. The first time we used it was our Easter egg hunt. We have a playground right out front, and our child life team had set up a great Easter egg hunt for everybody. With the robot, they were able to drive around, find the eggs, and call them out, and then we were able to put them in the basket for them and deliver them afterwards.
And we've all been kind of quietly sitting and nodding and laughing, trying to keep the whole, not talking over each other's Zoom meeting under control. But I think I want to open it up to everybody here, get everybody a chance to jump in, because if this was an actual PAX panel, I think there's about a half dozen times we would have jumped over each other to drop comments. One of the things I think is worth noting, though, is we all have very weird paths in, as will just about every patient tech you meet, because our position basically didn't exist in its formalized form until about, what, Connor, like 4 or 5 years ago?
Well, yeah, technically. A lot of us are brand new to this, like going in, we're almost at 2 years with the recent Child's Play grant.
I am, like, Abe is at the second oldest program that Child's Play funded. I'm at the third oldest. I'm here at 2.5, almost 3 years now.
Yeah.
Connor's at the first oldest program.
I think we're going on like 5 or 6 at this point.
And Garrett and Marty are pretty on that pretty early batch too.
Yeah, we're
Right
almost
at
at
2.
2, just about.
And then you have people like Mark who've been doing some version of this forever. So I think Child's Play's conservative count now is something like 20 to like 30 positions of some version like this.
And there's more coming soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Child's Play Charity's been around since 2003, and what they really do is they take gamers like all of us, help raise money. Different organizations and different programs really contribute to them, and what they do is not only provide the equipment itself, the games itself, the technology itself, but they also created these positions to help run all of that equipment. So hospitals across the country, if they have a child life department and a few other requirements, have the opportunity to go ahead and create a patient technology position. That's really what gets our programs up and started, and finding, of course, people like us from all different backgrounds and all walks of life to walk in and be like, hey, let's keep doing this with those passions. Child's Play Charity found out about what my boss was doing, and they connected at a PAX. And next thing you know, that's what started our program at CS Mott. And then that kind of turned into more of us being replicated across the country. So that way we can continue doing the work that we're doing. They have therapeutic guides available on their website if you're interested in kind of really like how these really work. Those are there, but also it really shows the impact that we're making and all of the different collaborative hands that have come together to make patient technology, gaming, therapeutic gaming, gaming specialists, really make an impact on hospitals. They also help women and children domestic violence centers So it's something that's kind of more quiet and not so much talked about, but they do make outreach to all the different organizations that really need help and really need that boost of gaming in their lives.
And they don't explicitly give money to hospitals and tell them to go buy video games with it. They're really big about supporting the child life programs as a whole. So, like before I got here, a lot of the annual gifts that Child's Play would give my program would go to buying new equipment, new toys, new like mobiles. Mobiles get stolen all or disappear or get put in closets or something all the time here. And they're not cheap to replace. So part of Child's Play's mission is just to support child life specialists themselves, not just us. We are kind of like a super way to support child life specialist teams because it means that they don't have to worry about all of the tech, all of the hardware. Like we become the geek in a space to fix things for them. But yeah, kind of expanding on all of that. We touched a little bit, most of us, on some of the therapeutic stuff we work on. I introed with kind of a base level of it, but I also work with our rehab. We're not a rehab hospital, so we don't do quite as much as some of the other guys do, but co-treats are kind of like our bread and butter by and large. The more we can integrate with all of the clinical and specialist parts of the hospital, the more value we can give everybody. And anything special you guys use as tech beyond all that?
Honestly, so my background before getting even in the hospital was working at Apple. And I always joke whenever a kid has an idea, there's an app for that. There literally is. So finding out what's going to exactly fit that need and then making it accessible because of the accessible technology that Apple provides really helps out. And I'm like sitting here fidgeting with like a ring literally the entire time we're talking. It's one of my favorite tools. So co-treatments are a really big piece to my job when it comes to music therapy, art therapy, working with our education team, really figuring out the exact goal and then making technology happen with it. With these guys, they're pretty neat because you can record things, and as you hit different colors working with art therapy, you can either record music, you can record vocabulary words, you can use it with a book and make animal sounds, all kinds of different things. So when I say like literally there's an app for that, there is, but also finding out like new toys to bring in similar to this. As soon as I found this was a thing and it's totally cleanable because it's silicone, it was game over from there. And now literally they walk around with it.
PT can really like that too.
PT and OT love it.
Because if you can tape different colors all over a room and make a kid move around for them.
Yep. And then when you have multiple of them, you can have, I believe it's like 6 at the same time. So you can have like a straight up like rock concert using the walls and murals around you. Just finding different items around. It's pretty neato.
To go with that, like I just feel the most important part of my job is not necessarily like knowing about any specific technology, but really knowing what the capacity of technology is. And so a lot of it is just problem solving, like, hey, I want to do this. And then in my mind, it's not a matter of can we do this? It's a matter of like how can we facilitate this to happen? Because I know the scope of the current technology position, and I know how to find that. So it's really more of a discovery research oriented approach, I suppose, because I've discovered tons of new technologies of making patients like desires come to fruition, or a way that a provider wants to interact with this patient. They say, hey, they like X, Y, and Z. I'm like, well, I don't know of any way of making it happen explicitly, but I know that there's a way that we can make this happen in some way, and so let's work together and find out. And I feel like that kind of sums up the entire profession in a way. I assume you guys have a similar
Google is your friend.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just what a lot of IT is in general. And so you take that and have to abstract it even more when you're working with children and some technology illiterate folks. So it's at the end of the day, it's just knowing how to find what you need to know, information abstraction.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you can use technology to really adapt to the needs of the patients, you know, because, you know, when anyone comes in to the hospital, they have like this, you kind of have a sense of loss of power, right? So you kind of want to empower them and give them the opportunity to have something that they can build with, you know. And I love finding things that like kids are starting to become passionate about, you know, some things like programming and kind of like introducing them to like, hey, here's a cool website that you can kind of build the game on, and all of a sudden they have their hands in something that they can build mastery on in life too, you know. And I was working with one patient, and he, you know, was going to go to college for programming, and he hadn't tried anything out yet. And I was like, hey, try this out. And he was a cancer patient, so he has a lot of meds he has to take care of and everything. And we started working on creating a program that can help just track his meds, right? And it would enter the data into an Excel sheet, and then that way he can kind of learn how to program, but also something useful in his real life too. And it showed him, you know, that he can use these things that he's learning in the hospital to actually make his life easier too. And I think that's one of my favorite things, you know, finding ways to really fuel the curiosities and passions of patients and help them have, you know, easier time with it.
And something that's so interesting to me about that is in our roles, we get to expose kids to different technologies or different industries even that they wouldn't even know about outside of the hospital. And how cool is it that we can expose them to these different career paths possibly when they're at their worst time in their life. They're sickest, they're at the hospital, it's not fun. But oh my God, we have 3D printers, we have programming, coding, robots. You can really expand a child's mind and perspective on the world at some of the worst times in their lives. And I think that's a really, really cool part of our jobs. My question to the panel though is what barriers do you guys see into bringing gaming into your hospitals? I know for me, I always come up against that perspective of physicians and especially families, that video games are just that. They're just games and they don't really go any further. But as we've all been saying during this whole panel, they obviously have this very deep-rooted therapeutic effect. So I was curious, how do you guys kind of wrestle with that barrier to entry sometimes?
We have, honestly, the two biggest barriers of entry are the cleanability of devices. The Oculus Quest is one of the coolest things to exist on the market. It is also completely useless for a hospital situation without heavy modification because it's covered in cloth. So in terms of like bringing cool tech, bringing that kind of tech in, that's just a major barrier, is making sure we're being safe. And then the other major barrier is infrastructure. And like feasibility, like it's not always easy for me to recommend, you know, hospital bills are expensive. I'm in San Antonio. I'm not in it's not a poor, like an economically poor city, but it is a like lower economic strata city. So it's harder to recommend things like full video games, full consoles, gaming PCs, things like that when I'm explaining this stuff to parents. I don't get a lot of pushback directly from parents and from physicians. Most of the time, what I get is me going, "You are 7. I am not giving you Call of Duty." And the mom being like, "We're in the hospital though. He plays it with his brother. It's okay. Give him Call of Duty." And the rating system is something that generally we don't go above teen. There are a handful of games that are just so ubiquitous. We've been able to get away with using M-rated games, specifically and just about only Call of Duty. Just because it is so ubiquitous, it becomes a kid doesn't want to do anything else besides play that game. Or Fortnite. We're lucky enough that our infrastructure will largely sustain Fortnite in the hospital. So our kids can play Fortnite from our hospital, which is very rare. But those are kind of our two big barriers.
Kind of speak to Abe's question. I found that focusing on like the social and group benefits has really helped out. So leading through like group play and different things like that can help show the advantages of being together and playing. Obviously, right now it's a little bit more difficult, and we have to find different ways of doing that. But being able to bring people together in a fun and interactive way together can really help families see the benefit. Another example I always rely on, more so like when parents and staff have questions on like streaming, is I always like to relate it back to sports because that has actually clicked a lot for different parents, that they don't understand why the kid's watching Twitch all day, but on the flip side, why are you watching sports all day? Same thing, just different avenue. Because kids watch it because a lot of times they'll be watching pros, or they'll be watching different commentary, different things like that, which is very similar to the sports world. So I think different things like that. Obviously, screen time is always going to be a hot topic for right now, at least for the foreseeable future. But I hope that everybody being forced into screen time, as we can see with COVID, that it'll open up more minds and more avenues and more ways for play.
Yeah, that's actually kind of the point I was going to bring up. Is I think the biggest impediment has really been not people that are doing the interactions like providers, but people that are in administrative positions that maybe don't understand the concept, or they're not day to day, they're not boots on the ground, so they don't really understand some of the context of what we're talking about. But I think, with this current scenario, I've been able to leverage that a little bit in my favor, in the sense that the way that the patients interact in the hospital, the way that they're isolated like this before a pandemic, right? We can use the context of, hey, remember how it was really hard to not go and interact with your friends for months? That's what it's always like in the hospital. And so you can kind of recontextualize this video games is a vector for them to participate in normal life. And so if you can take a real life scenario that literally everyone has encountered now, I think that is a little bit of a silver lining, in the sense that we have, at least I've been able to use that, and I hope that I can continue to use that in the future to kind of facilitate more gaming related things or more gaming adjacent things, because it's obviously impactful. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's not always obvious to those who aren't in this world. And I think that having a common issue like this is a really good way to help kind of breach that barrier. And I'm hopeful that it will continue to be successful, at least in recontextualizing.
Honestly, what everybody said, the community aspect of video games, even if it's just one-to-one bedside with a patient, especially with the newer digital world, right? Online connects all of us in some form or way. I feel like that's a really big piece of the social aspect as a whole, whether it is a large scale event or you are one-to-one with somebody who's just speaking the same language as you. A lot of times we're able to go in and talk tech, and we're able to have those harder conversations that like they're not comfortable opening up with somebody who just doesn't get on their level. And that's something that's really beautiful about what we do. But another piece that really kicks in is accessibility, like with cleanability, 100%. And any technology that comes in the hospital has to be accessible as well. So we have to kind of gauge like who can use it, how can they use it, how can we adapt it so it can be used by everybody? Because the one thing we never want to say is, no, you can't use that. So finding a way around to make it work for them and their individual needs and their individual abilities, so that way they can continue to play or do.
Yeah, kind of to bounce off of what Connor was saying there, something kind of for all you guys. What is something you guys see that is kind of less on the tech side and more on the social side of what we do? Because I think I've seen a lot of great interactions, and it's just with patients and I'm not even playing a game or doing any tech, but it's just the matter of, I know who streamers are, I know who YouTubers are, I know the different modes in Minecraft, something simple like that. That just being able to, like Connor was saying there, talk the jargon, and truly understand what their interests are and everything like that, can be very impactful for them. And like I said, sometimes I just hang out, we talk for a little bit, and that's all they needed. They might be like an older teen and they don't necessarily need or have any interest in playing, but just being able to talk about different influencers and everything like that kind of makes them feel home.
Anime. The ability to talk anime with kids. I've had a lot of kids who are sitting drawing. They don't want to play video games. They're, you know, a lot of teen girls too. I've finally taught most of my nurses and most of my staff that teen girls play video games too. Like all kids ask them. But some of them are like nerdy, but they're not that type of nerdy. But I'll see them drawing. I'm like, are you drawing Ichigo? And they're like, wait, you know who this is? And I'm like, yeah. And then there's an hour. It's a full intervention of me just talking about anime. And sometimes I leave with anime suggestions, so I have to go watch more anime to come back to work to talk more anime the next week or the next 3 days later. It's like being that nerd is really surprisingly valuable beyond just our video game life. Also playing chess. I've gotten to play chess with a bunch of kids, which is awesome. So our next major question is what a lot of you are thinking, which is, this job is awesome. How do I get it? And of course, with most of us having the most bizarre backgrounds you can imagine, there's not a real easy, simple path here. I know our most common suggestions are reach out to local hospitals, see if they can if they're accepting volunteers. Obviously, in the COVID times, that is a different problem. And don't reach out to local hospitals being like, I want to play video games with your kids. That scares them. Reach out and be like, hey, I want to volunteer. How can I like work in the playrooms, help out, do that kind of interaction? And you maybe, you know, you find out that the hospital has a bunch of equipment, especially in a closet. Always look in closets. And as a techie, you can be like, look, I can fix all these Xboxes. And the child life team is going to just think that's awesome and be like, please, please. And, you know, you can start talking about that as the thing you become known for.
And a lot of hospitals are creating like specific volunteer positions for gaming. They want people who have the skills, who can come and play kids. Yeah.
We have specific gaming volunteers. That was part of one of the things that I created in my program, was we wanted to have volunteers that I was in charge of and could delegate specific gaming related tasks. Because is a portion of our job that you can delegate to like a skilled gamer. Obviously our job encompasses much more than playing games, but that part can be abstracted if you can filter through volunteers that are knowledgeable and skillful, interacting with kids and also knowledgeable about games. So that hopefully that will be more popular. There's not that many hospitals that have that, but ideally in the future there'll be more, and that would be a great route.
And especially now with the COVID situation, a lot of hospitals have put a giant pause on having volunteers. I know my hospital is on pause until the end of the year, so that's a giant pause on our regular arcades and our regular like weekly programming that we would do. Utilizing the new virtual, there are different ways to still be involved. So even if it's not an immediate like absolute yes right now, just keep reaching out to see if there's different avenues, because you never really know how you can just kind of get your foot in there and just start talking and have those conversations and build those relationships with people. And especially, again, using the virtual right now, a lot of hospitals are looking for support. I know a lot of us are involved in either Extra Life or Tiltify to kind of get streamers and those YouTubers and all these people that we've met that say, oh, look, you're doing amazing things. Thank you. But right now, it's kind of like that way of like, if we can't physically support, how can we support in other ways, whether that's getting the word across, talking about it, or fundraising from a different standpoint. So that way we can continue to give the technology to these kiddos so they can keep using it in different avenues.
Marty?
Yeah, I think I'd say the two main commonalities that I see with most of us game techs are obviously some sort of tech background, interest, and everything like that. And then a lot of us also have like different childcare backgrounds. I used to work at the Y and a therapeutic horseback riding center. I volunteered there. So different backgrounds like that. So that might be also another avenue. There's also different like camp programs for hospitalized children that do great work every summer. Different programs like that that you might be able to get involved with. It might be like a stepping stone into getting your resume more fleshed out with relevant experience that our hiring managers would be interested in.
And we'll let Garrett talk a little bit about what specific kind of things he's looking for. But just as a general rule, good with kids, good with tech is literally the core of our job, as well as being aware you're working with kids in a hospitalized setting. This is something a lot of people don't really think about right away, but we talked about a number of our patients have passed away, or you watch kids deal with cancer or cystic fibrosis or a broken arm or an appendicitis. But it is like you have to be aware of that as a reality of these jobs. But we'll let Garrett keep going.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, this is a very interesting niche of skills. Not a ton of people necessarily have tech experience and child care experience. They're generally separated. So it's interesting that this is a field. You know, it's a very cool emerging one. And so at Seattle Children's Hospital, we did get approval for an additional position to be funded. So we are currently, or very shortly, hiring another person to join my team, going from myself to now a team of people. It's pretty exciting. So if you're interested, I would definitely be following Child's Play Charity or CP Charity on Facebook. It's got the little green controller like we have on the side, whichever. I don't know how I'm going to be oriented in the final, but whichever way it is, the logo will be there. You can find them, and they'll post the job when it's posted or when it's ready to be posted in the next, I'm hoping, week, 2 weeks. Hospital time is very slow. As I think everyone said, there was like 2 or 3 months after they applied before they heard back for the most part. So it's a slow process, but yeah, if you have some child care experience, like summer camps or after school programs or things like that, would be highly preferred. And then technology. And if you're watching this at this point, at the end of this, you're probably interested enough. So you can go ahead and apply if you're willing to relocate to Seattle. It's a great place. There is going to be a posting here. I know there's probably 3 others at least this year, but I know we are hiring. So if you want to work with me.
Yeah, and like I said, there's other ones out there. Like I mentioned, there's a Dallas hospital whose name I completely forget, who's doing this completely natively. So you can keep your eyes peeled. Not everything will show up on the Child's Play Twitter, but we're going to put up our how to contact us slide. Our emails will all be there, and because this is a video, it is pausable. The other thing, though, is we could probably all talk about what we do, especially just if you put the 6 of us in a room together. We would talk for dozens of hours and smell really bad by the end of it. But one of the things we're going to do is throw to a kind of drop in, drop out Google Hangouts, sort of a version of the we're going to hang out after the panel and answer questions. And that'll be going for insert time, but probably about 45 minutes right after that, right after this kind of wraps up officially. And we'll be hanging out there and just chatting. I might hang out longer, who knows. Just so that, like, if you have other questions, you can come ask them live. We're also gonna have a Google form, so you can ask kind of generic questions to all of us. Or you can feel free to email any of us. Our emails are on there for a reason. We want this to spread. We want this to grow. We ran out of a little bit of time, but like we want this to be in every hospital in more than a single person team. We want this to be the kind of thing that you find everywhere. My long term, I want this in adult side too. So like, please feel free to reach out, ask us questions. Half the time our answer is going to be, we'll figure it out, but we'll answer them anyway.
Thank you all for tuning in and have an amazing PAX.